You've heard of the old saying, your network is your net worth. So in that spirit, let me share with you 10 of my favorite lessons from this timeless classic, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Number 1 favorite timeless lesson from How to Win Friends and Influence People. Become genuinely interested in other people. You can make more friends in 2 months by being interested in them than in 2 years by making them interested in you. It's tempting to live life merely trying to impress people and get people interested in us. Oh, look how interesting I am. Look what I've accomplished. Look what I have. However, this is a sure way to not have any authentic relationships. Just as the rest of the solar system doesn't rotate around the Earth, the world doesn't revolve around us, despite how much we feel like that at times. Dale Carnegie once had a conversation with Howard Thurston, one of the most famous magicians of his time. At one point, his shows were so popular and large that he needed 8 train cars to transport his roadshow. So when Dale Carnegie met Thurston, he asked him what his secret to success was. And this is how he answered. He said his success all stemmed from his genuine interest in people. Because he was so grateful for his audience, he would practice everything he did before he went on the stage. Every gesture, every intonation of his voice, and even every lifting of an eyebrow. He was obsessed with giving the best show possible because he was interested in his audience. The show wasn't about him. It was about the people who came to see him. When we don't cultivate a genuine interest in other human beings, we live very self-centered, selfish lives. And let's be honest, no one wants to be around someone like that. Number 2 favorite timeless lesson from How to Win Friends and Influence People. Remember people's names and use them often. The average person is more interested in their name than in all the other names on earth put together. Can you recall a time when someone mispronounced your name, called you by the wrong name, or even completely forgot what your name was? How did you feel afterwards? Probably not so great, and not highly of that person you were talking to. But how about that time when someone remembered your name and used it throughout the conversation? How did you feel then? Probably a lot closer to this person than you thought you'd be. Names have amazing power. You don't honor it, and people will turn their back on you. But if you remember it and use it well, then now they're your best friend. Andrew Carnegie was known as the King of Steel. During his lifetime, Andrew Carnegie had a peak inflation-adjusted net worth of $310 billion. That's enough to make him the 4th richest human being of all time. Now, because he was considered a king of steel, it's easy to assume that he knew a lot about steel. However, in actuality, he knew very little about the manufacturing of steel. Rather, it was the thousands of people working for him that knew more about steel than he did. Andrew Carnegie didn't acquire a net worth of $310 billion because of his expertise in steel, but rather because of his ability to handle people well. He mastered the art of remembering and using people's names in the most powerful ways. In one notable example, Andrew Carnegie was in a fight with a company owned by George Pullman for supremacy in the railroad sleeping car business. George Pullman was another well-known entrepreneur at the time. Both were struggling with each other, slashing prices and destroying all chances of profit. However, in one evening, when Andrew Carnegie ran into George Pullman at the hotel, he made a proposal of a merger. George Pullman listened but wasn't convinced. That was until he got this reply to the question, what would the new company be called? Andrew Carnegie replied promptly, why? The Pullman Palace Car Company, of course. Pullman was immediately interested, and the rest is history. Remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and the most important sound in any language. Also, please note I created a free 1-page companion PDF guide to go along with this video. Pretty much everything I'm covering here in a simple to digest, 1-page format for all you information nerds out there. Go to the link I'll have in the description below to download your free copy of this 1-page companion PDF. Number 3 favorite timeless lesson from How to Win Friends and Influence People. Always make the other person feel important. It doesn't matter who it is. The server at the restaurant, your boss at work, your spouse, your kids. Get in the habit of making everyone you encounter feel important and valued. Dale Carnegie believed this to be one of the most important laws of human conduct. He believed this so much that in order not to forget this rule, he made a sign that read, "You are important," and hung it in the front of his classroom for all to see. He wanted every one of his students to understand that they were equally important. It's easy to believe at times that some people are more important than others. My boss is more important than my team members. The CEO is more important than the line worker. The president is more important than the secretary. However, if we approach life this way, it will surely lead to misery. What has helped me to reframe my mind whenever I feel a sliding towards categorizing people to important versus unimportant has been this: to remind myself that there is something to learn from everyone. From my car mechanic, from some random guy on YouTube, and especially from my 7-year-old daughter. Every man I meet is my superior in some way. In that, I learn of him. What are some other practical strategies to make someone feel important? Number 4 favorite timeless lesson from How to Win Friends and Influence People. Listen, and listen actively. During the darkest hours of the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln wrote to an old friend in Springfield, Illinois, and asked him to come to Washington. Lincoln said he had some important problems he wanted to discuss with him. When the old friend arrived at the White House, Lincoln spoke to him for hours. He talked about freeing the slaves. He went over all the arguments for both supporting it and against it. At the time, there were many that denounced Lincoln for not freeing the slaves, as well as many that denounced him for fear he was going to free them. After talking for hours, Lincoln said thank you to his old friend, said goodnight, and sent him back to Illinois. Now, what was most interesting about this interaction was that not once did Lincoln ask his old friend for his opinion. Rather, Lincoln had done all the talking himself. That was all he wanted. He wanted someone that would just actively listen to the mental debate he was struggling through, and this helped him to clarify his thinking and his decision. The former Harvard president, Charles W. Eliot, said this: "There is no mystery about successful business intercourse. Exclusive attention to the person who is speaking to you is very important. Nothing else is so flattering as that." If you think about it, it sounds obvious, right? You don't need to have been the president of the United States or the president of Harvard to understand this power of listening. When we actively listen, we're conveying the message that what the other person is saying matters. We're letting them know that they're important and that they're valued. So next time you're in a conversation with someone, give them your full attention. Drown out everything else and listen. But what to do when the other party is done talking? Continue to stare at them? Probably not. That's just creepy. Which leads to the next lesson, the number 5 favorite timeless lesson from How to Win Friends and Influence People. Talk in terms of the other person's interest. Theodore Roosevelt, apart from being the 26th president of the United States, was also known to be a great conversationalist. And what made him a great conversationalist? He always spoke in terms of the other person's interest. When Roosevelt was expecting a visitor, he would stay up late the night before and read up on subjects which his guest was known to be interested in. This allowed him to have a great conversation with a wide range of people. It didn't matter if his visitor was a cowboy, a New York politician, or a diplomat. Because he approached each conversation in terms of what the other person was interested in, he was able to foster great relationships. The best and the easy road to a person's heart is to talk about the things they treasure the most. It's tempting to talk only about what we're interested in. This is natural. We're all selfish beings. So it takes intentional effort to reframe our mind from talking only about what I'm interested in to consider what the other person might be interested in. But when we can learn and hone this skill, it will pay dividends. People will come out of speaking with you saying what a great conversationalist you are, when you barely said anything about yourself. All you did was take genuine interest in the other person, recognize what the other person was interested in, and carry the conversation in that direction. When you can refrain from trying to impress and genuinely focus on what the other person is interested in, this will automatically make you interesting and likable. Number 6 favorite timeless lesson from How to Win Friends and Influence People. This one is an obvious one, but hard one to do in our busy and stressful world. Smile. It costs nothing, but creates much. I don't think we need any scientific studies to validate the power of a simple smile. How do we naturally respond when we see someone with a genuine smile on their face? Many of us can't help ourselves but respond with a smile. This is most obvious with kids. Show me a baby with a big smile, and you will automatically see a sour man or a woman turn their frown into a smile. And smiles have a natural positive impact on our mental state. Our minds are filled with anxiety of the day, a tough day at work, financial struggles, or even physical pain. But when we can put a smile on our face, we feel a bit lighter. The act of smiling reprograms our feelings. And when we get in the habit of smiling, we can spread this gift to others. As Dale Carnegie would say, when you go out the door today, draw the chin in, carry the crow of the head high, and fill the lung to the utmost. Drink in the sunshine, greet your friend with a smile, and put soul into every hand clasp. Don't think people will think you're weird or goofy because you have a big smile on your face. You have a big day ahead of you, and with that big smile, you're going to seize all the opportunities a day has to offer. Your smile is a messenger of your goodwill. Your smile brightens the lives of all who see it. To someone who has seen a dozen people frown, scowl, or turn their faces away, your smile is like the sun breaking through the clouds. Number 7 favorite timeless lesson from How to Win Friends and Influence People. Don't criticize. Any fool can criticize, condemn, and complain. And most fools do. But it takes character and self-control to be understanding and forgiving. The Battle of Gettysburg was fought during the first 3 days of July 1863. On the night of July 4th, after a painful defeat, General Robert E. Lee began to retreat southward. However, because of the pouring rain, when the Confederate Army reached the Potomac River, they found the river swollen and impassable. They were essentially trapped. Lincoln saw this as a golden opportunity to capture Lee's army and end the war. He ordered General Meade, the commanding general of the Union Army, to attack. However, General Meade hesitated. He waited too long, and the Confederate Army was able to escape during this delay. Lincoln was furious. They had lost the opportunity to end the war right there and then. So he wrote a scathing letter rebuking General Meade for his incompetence, and Lincoln didn't hold back. He expressed in this letter how distressed he was. how disappointed he was. How could General Meade lose such a golden opportunity? What do you think General Meade's reaction was when he read the letter? Well, we will never know because Lincoln never actually mailed the letter. The letter was found many years later among his papers after Lincoln's death. Lincoln, probably after he had written the letter, realized he shouldn't be so quick to criticize and condemn. He wasn't there. General Meade went through a lot in the 3 days of fighting at Gettysburg. Thousands of soldiers lost their lives and the battle was brutal. Lincoln probably realized that if he had seen as much blood as Meade had seen, he wouldn't be so anxious to attack either. And he also realized that while condemning someone would relieve his feelings, it wouldn't do any good for the person receiving that criticism. So next time we feel a temptation to quickly judge and criticize, let's pause and try to understand them. Let's try to figure out why they did what they did. Because understanding and forgiving breeds sympathy, tolerance, and kindness. Number 8 favorite timeless lesson from How to Win Friends and Influence People. Sincerely appreciate people. The deepest principle in human nature is the craving to be appreciated. Years ago, a teacher in Detroit asked a young boy named Stevie to help her find a mouse that was lost in the classroom. The reason? This young boy had a remarkable pair of ears to compensate for his blind eyes. While most people only saw a blind boy, this teacher saw something more. She appreciated the boy's natural talent for hearing. For Stevie, this was one of the first time in his life when he was shown appreciation for his talented ears, and it changed him. He saw it as the beginning of a new life and went on to further develop his gift of hearing. We now know this young boy for his stage name, Stevie Wonder, one of the greatest pop singers and songwriters of the 70s. Sincere appreciation for other people not only is important for our own souls, but it can change people's lives. I shall pass this way but once. Any good that I can do or any kindness I can show to any human being, let me do it now. Let me not defer or neglect it, for I shall not pass this way again. Number 9 favorite timeless lesson from How to Win Friends and Influence People. Avoid arguments. The only way to get the best of an argument is to avoid it. Argument almost feels like a natural part of life. Politicians argue about why they are the best candidate for the presidency. Our colleagues argue why their business idea is better than the other guy's one. And we argue with our spouse about why we should have tacos for dinner instead of Korean barbecue. An interesting thing about arguments is that most often, we feel like we lost afterwards, regardless of whether we won or lost a specific argument. There is no winning because arguing always comes with pushing someone else down in order to elevate ourselves. So Dale Carnegie says to avoid it outright. If you find yourself in a discussion that is veering towards an argument, reorient yourself to look for a win-win solution. A solution where both of you can come out as winners. It doesn't have to be tacos or Korean barbecue. How about if we had Korean barbecue tacos? If you argue and contradict, you may achieve a victory sometimes, but it will be an empty victory because you will never get your opponent's goodwill. Number 10 favorite timeless lesson from How to Win Friends and Influence People. If I am wrong, admit it. Admit to our mistakes. As mentioned earlier, the Battle of Gettysburg is considered a key turning point of the Civil War. It ended the Confederacy's aspiration to establish an independent nation and eventually to its complete surrender. And within this battle, there was one specific incident that also marked this turning point. Pickett's Charge. Pickett's Charge was an infantry assault ordered by the Confederate General Robert E. Lee against the center of the Union lines. However, the attack failed. All of General Pickett's brigade commanders except one went down, and 80% of his 5,000 men fell during the assault. The attack was a costly mistake, and it decisively ended the battle. And more importantly, General Lee's invasion of the North. Now, if General Lee had wanted to blame the failure of the charge on someone else, he could have easily found someone. However, he was far too noble to blame others for his decisions. This is what General Robert E. Lee said when facing Pickett's beaten and bloody troops as they were retreating back to Confederate lines. All this has been my fault, and I alone have lost this battle. Few leaders in all of history have had the courage and character to admit their mistakes like General Lee did. Thank you guys for watching. In the line of character building, I recommend you check out my video on developing more financial grit here. Until next time, all the best.